Our newscast tonight, stocks across the board tumble, fueled by fresh concerns about the strength of the global economy. Asian markets, including Korea's benchmark KOSPI, brace for heavy losses after stocks on Wall Street plunge more than 2%. Now, after what seems like countless cancellations, postponements, the Koreas will talk about holding reunions for families separated by the Korean War. What, if anything, will they agree on? Choose home or work, or dare to juggle both. Those are often the harsh and limited options that working mothers face in the nation. But a series of new government measures means much needed help may be at hand. Stay with us for these stories and more.
It is 10 a.m. in Barcelona, 4 p.m. in Bangkok, and 6 on a Tuesday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Kon-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us. We begin this evening with financial market jitters.
Right, it might be time to buckle up as Asian markets, including Korea's benchmark KOSPI, are bracing for heavy losses after stocks on Wall Street plunged more than 2% on Monday.
It was the biggest fall since June as worries over U.S. and global growth continue to mount. Our Yoo Li-an starts us off.
Fresh concerns about the strength of the global economy on the back of weaker than expected data out of the United States and China sent stocks tumbling on Tuesday. Taking a cue from overnight losses on Wall Street, the Korean KOSPI closed below the 1900 mark, falling 1.7% to 1886. Japan's Nikkei 225 closed at its lowest level in 3 months, falling by over 4%, while MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside of Japan fell 1.4%. U.S. stocks suffered their worst drop since June on Monday, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbling 326 points, or 2.1%, to 15,372. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq slumped 2.3% and 2.6% respectively. Monday's sell-off was sparked by data that showed new order growth in the U.S. manufacturing sector in January plunged by the most in 33 years, while spending on new construction projects barely rose from December. Experts say the U.S. economy has hit a soft patch.
We do know through the latter part of 2013, businesses seem to ramp up their inventories, perhaps a little bit more than they wanted to, so a lot of people were expecting that production would slow a little bit.
Stocks were also pressured by concern over China's economy, which saw service sector growth in January stutter to a 5-year low. And this is shaking the confidence of investors, who have their feet deep in U.S. stocks.
Most investors have about 80% of their equities in U.S. equities, and also have anywhere from 60 to 80% of their total portfolio in stock, which is far too concentrated.
With the U.S. Federal Reserve expected to further taper its massive stimulus program over the coming months, it looks like the market uncertainty is here to stay, at least for the time being. Yoo Li-an, Arirang News.
Well, exactly 4 months from today, on June 4th, Koreans will head to the polls to elect the new heads of local governments. It may seem like a long way away at the moment, but the rival parties have officially started their 4-month-long race to the line. Our political correspondent Kim Hyun-ji reports.
The pre-registration of candidates for the June 4th local elections began on Tuesday and will run until May 14th. The elections cover 17 provincial governor and mayoral seats, as well as positions for education superintendent and local assembly members. Those who choose to register during this period can carry out certain kinds of campaign activities, allowing voters to gain an early understanding of the candidates running in their region ahead of the main candidate registration period in mid-May. While busily contacting political heavyweights for the upcoming elections, the ruling Saenuri Party is trying to deflect the opposition's attempt to paint the elections as an early-term evaluation of the Park Geun-hye administration. Saenuri Party floor leader Choi Kyung-hwan has stressed the local elections are about picking the best leaders for local governments, and not about passing judgment on how the Park administration has done thus far. The main opposition Democratic Party leadership has issued a political reform plan in an apparent bid to get the upper hand in its competition against the dark horse of the opposition, independent lawmaker An Chol-soo, who generated excitement among voters with his plans to reform politics in 2012. The Democratic Party's political reform proposal centers around scrapping the privileges of lawmakers and includes having all lawmakers report to an independent ethics committee their plans for overseas travel and commemoration ceremonies for the publication of their books. An is aiming to launch his own party by March and field candidates for all 17 provincial governor and mayoral seats. With the addition of An's party, the June local elections are expected to be a three-way race for the first time in 16 years. The Democratic Party is leaving room for cooperation with An's party, saying the public wants the liberal opposition bloc to unite and win the June local elections to ring the bell on the conservative Park administration. But since it's not clear whether An will reciprocate, a major reshuffle of the opposition bloc seems inevitable. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
And with the elections coming up, President Park Geun-hye has ordered officials to keep a close watch on the upcoming local elections in June. Speaking at a cabinet meeting Tuesday, President Park said as the June local elections are the first elections to be held during her administration, they must be, quote, fair and clean. The president ordered government ministries to make sure that the political neutrality of the elections is kept and added that she will penalize anyone involved in acts of corruption. Now, the president also asked the ministries to prepare their status reports, which will start Wednesday, and include practical measures for correcting irregularities in government reforming public institutions. Now, might the Year of the Horse usher in a new year of bipartisan support within the halls of the National Assembly? The chief of the ruling Saenuri Party reached out to the opposition on Tuesday, calling for cooperation across party lines to deal with the problems facing the nation. Ji Myung-gil has more.
At the beginning of this month's extra-parliamentary session on Tuesday, ruling Saenuri Party chairman Hwang Woo-yeok called for bipartisan efforts to tackle the country's pending issues.
We need to form a long-term bipartisan coalition in order to implement effective state policies in the future. We can set up an organization in the National Assembly to promote the coalition.
The ruling party chief also spoke out on two issues, the domestic economy and North Korea. He vowed to work with the opposition to implement the 3-year economic innovation plan announced by President Park Geun-hye last month. The focus will be fostering the creative economy and balancing the economy as a whole by expanding the focus beyond foreign exports to stimulating domestic demand. He also stressed that Korea needs to strengthen the competitiveness of its smaller firms.
The government needs to better support Korea's small and mid-sized firms so that they can grow like Korea's major conglomerates and have a strong presence in global markets.
Hwang also urged rival parties to pass a long-pending bill on North Korea's human rights situation and to encourage more cultural exchanges between South Korea and North Korea. He said national integration was a first step to moving toward inter-Korean reunification. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
It is often said that in Korea, for women, you need to be able to leap over tall buildings in a single bound or be more powerful than a locomotive to continue your career after getting married and having children, as childcare and housework are still seen as primarily a women's responsibility. But help is at hand for women who want to juggle a career and their home life thanks to a series of new government measures. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
The Korean government has unveiled a comprehensive plan aimed at making the nation's female workforce a new growth engine. Related ministries say to help ease the chronic problem of women giving up their careers after giving birth, new measures will be rolled out to allow their husbands share the burden of raising their family. That includes raising the paternity allowance for male workers by as much as 50%. The government also plans to operate and support a pool of substitute workers that can be inserted to companies understaffed due to workers going on paternal leave, and it will also expand the number of public nurseries. The government has also pledged to provide various vocational programs for women to make it easier for them to return to their careers. This comes as Korea's female employment rate sits at just 54%, much lower than the OECD average of 65%. The government believes that boosting the female employment rate is a crucial factor in achieving its ambitious goal of raising the overall employment rate to 70%. It added higher female participation in the labor force is also an essential way to raise the country's potential economic growth. The government will carry on with its plans during its weekly economy-related ministers' meeting. It will also make female employment the one of the main agendas of its 3-year economic innovation plan. 황지혜, Arirang News.
The U.S. state of Virginia has taken another step toward ensuring students learn about the Korean name East Sea, as well as the Japanese name Sea of Japan for the body of water between the two countries. The Virginia House Education Committee passed a bill Monday that requires school texts in the state to use both names. Virginia State Governor Terry McAuliffe said Tuesday that he is willing to sign the bill once it passes the full assembly Thursday, where it is widely expected to win approval. Korea argues the Japanese name for the sea reflects Japan's imperialistic aggressions.
Now, the two Koreas will hold working-level talks tomorrow to set the date and location for a round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War.
The meeting will take place on the North Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom at 10 a.m. Korea time, and South Korea's Unification Ministry said Tuesday that the two sides have exchanged the lists of their 3-member Red Cross delegations through the Inter-Korean hotline. North Korea broke its week of silence on Monday to propose that the Koreas meet for working-level talks on either Wednesday or Thursday. South Korea has previously proposed holding the reunions from February 17th to the 22nd at North Korea's Mount Kumgang resort.
So North Korea, after staying silent for days following an initial proposal from Seoul last week, agreed to hold talks with South Korea in organizing a rare reunion event for families separated by the Korean War.
But of course, with North Korea, things are seldom as they seem. Skepticism is always warranted. So what exactly does Pyongyang have in mind? And will meetings of these family members, many of them elderly, actually happen in the foreseeable future?
Well, joining us live in the studio to give us some perspective is Dr. Kim Tae-woo, Chair Professor at Dongguk University and former President of the Korea Institute for National Unification. Dr. Kim, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Now, first off, it took North Korea roughly a week to respond to Seoul's proposal for working-level talks to hold this event. Now, what do you think was going on in North Korea during that time? I mean, why the delayed response?
I guess North Korea spent several days, vacillating over how to respond to our suggestion. For them, there may be both neutral and political strategic reasons. Unlike South Korea, they need time and period to screen, educate, and those separate families who are supposed to meet South Korean counterparts. And also, February 16 is the birthday of Kim Jong-il, so they may be busy preparing for celebrating that day. And also, the key resolve combined military exercise begins the end of this month, so they may be vacillating so far. And also, they have some strategic political reasons too. They may have thought of the effect of a psychological operation toward South Korea. We have a national election June, February may be too early for them to expect the maximum effect on their own psychological, the operation against South Korea.
Of course, North Korea always expecting to pop the unexpected and expecting maximum resolve with minimum effort there.
That's right.
Well, February 16th, maybe after February 16th, we are hoping they will come to terms with South Korea and hold family reunion events. Is it a possibility maybe sometime after mid-February?
Of course, mid-February is the best timing for South Korea. You know the Kim Jong-il's birthday and also the key reserve operation. So South Korean government tried to avoid both situations. But as I said earlier, North Korea, it may not be really agreeable to North Korea. But this time, even though I expect some hagglings over timing in the working level conferences, I very carefully focus the possibility of North Korean acceptance of our suggestion. As you know, since the New Year address of Kim Jong-un, North Korea has shown a faith in opening up dialogue with the South Korea, and they have their own reasons why they want the dialogue with the South Korea. So that's why this time a little bit hopeful,
Now, you mentioned the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington scheduled for the end of this month, which is, of course, an annual event. Now, North Korea has been repeatedly calling for the cancellation of that event. Now, if the two Koreas were to set a date for the family reunions after the joint drills kick off, how do you think North Korea will respond?
Tricky question. Well, when North Korea began to insist that the U.S. and South Korea should cancel the exercise, actually they were requesting what South Korea cannot accept. It was and it is provocative and unpredictable North Korea. That has given all the reasons for that combined military exercises. But anyway, the key reserve operation, key reserve exercise will give North Korea more chances to accuse the ROK-US the alliance. That's why I would say that if two Koreas agreed someday after that exercise, then the reunion of the families may become a little bit uncertain or precarious, if not aborted.
Right, and not only that, of course, South Korean government has been very adamant about carrying out this annual joint drills with Washington. Now, if South Korea, if and when it does carry out the drills, is there even a possibility of a North Korea provocation?
Well, they can do everything, they can cancel it or everything. But the canceling agreement is not an unfamiliar thing to us. And also the military provocation is a problem of another dimension. I think North Korea is now caught by two different disasters. On one side, they need the outside tension, in order to strengthen their internal unity. But on the other side, they need the improvement of their image and relations with international communities. So that's why anything can happen. So the provocation is always possible. And frankly speaking, their motivations for military provocation is higher than before. I mean, particularly since the execution of Jang Sung-taek in North Korea. So South Korea should be prepared against all possibilities, yes.
Well, North Korea, expect the unexpected with North Korea as usual. One of the possible strategy behind North Korea's decision to pursue the resumption of family reunion discussions is perhaps to distract the international community's attention from their nuclear ambitions, especially the restart of the Yongbyon complex.
Okay, what we know from our past experience is that North Korea's peaceful offensive or dialogue gesture has nothing to do with the stopping of their nuclear weapon development. So that's why simultaneously we need a highly sophisticated strategies of conversation and pressure to stop their nuclear ambitions. Nevertheless, I would say North Korea has shown rather bold stance with regard to their nuclear policies. In the year of 2012, they specified North Korea itself as a nuclear weapon state. And then next year, they conducted a nuclear test amid international condemnation of particularly the Chinese opposition. So I would say by showing this peaceful stance, North Korea want relaxation of their international sanctions rather than disguise or hiding their nuclear activities.
Not only that, some North Korean observers have been pointing out at the possibility of these peaceful gestures by North Korea signaling I suppose, regime or instability within North Korea and leading to a possible change within or the fall of the North Korean regime. What's your take on that?
Okay, you are talking about the contingencies in North Korea, right? Well, I cannot say contingencies is likely, but I can say rather safely that contingencies is more likely than before, particularly since the execution of Jang Sung-taek. Well, looking back upon that case, the execution of Jang Sung-taek was really a multi-phased incident, It was like a military coup in Palace to establish Kim Jong-un's leadership, as well as it is power struggle among the pragmatic civilians and military cadres sticking to their vested interest. And also military itself is divided and regrouping and also undergoing a rapid generation changes. So anything can happen in North Korea. Even though the contingencies by a commotion of ordinary people is not likely, but I can say something by another round of power struggle among the power elite group is more likely, So that's why South Korea should be, all kind of contingencies, no matter how much likely or unlikely.
Well, now it's just a drop in the ocean. We will keep our fingers crossed that there will be some positive ripple effects from there on.
Sure.
Well, Dr. Kim Tae-woo, Chair Professor of Dongguk University and former President of the Korea Institute for National Unification, thank you so much for making time to be here with us.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2 points. Now, it has been 5 days since more than 160 tons of oil was spilled by a tanker in the southern port city of Yeosu here in Korea. And while all efforts are being made to clean up the mess, the oil is spreading, as are the questions about who was culpable. Our Kwon So-ah has the details.
Cleaning up the Yeosu oil spill will be harder than initially expected. While volunteers and authorities are doing all they can to reduce damage from the Lunar New Year's Day accident, tidal currents and winds are making things worse. In addition to waters off the southern port city of Yeosu in Jeollanam-do province, the oil has spread north, south, and east from the original spill site to Namhae-gun County in Gyeongsang-namdo province, where an oil slick measuring roughly 30 kilometers in diameter has formed. Aside from the cleanup efforts, questions are being raised about the accident itself. The head of the Yeosu Maritime Police Department said Monday that 164 tons were spilled, which is 200 times greater than the first estimates by the company said to be responsible for the accident, GS Caltex. The spill happened after a Singapore-registered oil tanker hit a landing bridge, causing 3 underwater pipelines operated by GS Caltex to rupture. The Yeosu Coast Guard blames the tanker's pilots for exceeding the recommended speed on approach and GS Caltex for not reporting the spill until 30 minutes after it occurred. Residents affected by the spill say they're worried the pollution could lead to health problems and impact fishing, a primary source of income for many in the area.
When I first saw the news, they said it wasn't a big amount of oil that spilled. That's why I didn't think it would spread this far to where I work.
While officials say it is not difficult to get rid of the oil spilled in the water, the bigger problem lies on the seashore, where the cleanup process could take weeks. In the meantime, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said Tuesday that GS Caltex should compensate those affected. The ministry, company, and related authorities are scheduled to hold a meeting on the issues surrounding the spill on Thursday. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, 2 days after protesters in Thailand disrupted voting in general elections, the opposition Democratic Party says it will challenge the basic premise of the elections in court. 2 complaints were to be filed with the Constitutional Court on Tuesday on claims that the election violated the Thai constitution as it came during a government-imposed state of emergency. Now, the nation's election commission is set to meet Wednesday to investigate possible irregularities in the voting process. Meanwhile, on the streets of Bangkok, anti-government protesters vowed to organize even larger demonstrations against Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and her government. The protesters are seeking an unelected People's Council to oversee political reforms and want Prime Minister Yingluck out of office.
Now let's get a check on the weather with our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle, welcome back. And we had another day of frigid temperatures here in the capital of Seoul.
That's right, Daniel. And the cold wave advisories are still in effect all over the nation, as well as the dry weather warning.
And Michelle, the winds are making things a lot worse, right?
The wind chills are definitely a factor, Kanyang. The current temperature in Seoul is at -4 degrees, but the wind chill is at -12. And tomorrow we'll have similar conditions to today with clear skies with cold temperature. We can also expect the snow or rain on Thursday and Friday in the central regions. Now going over to the readings, the temperatures are dropping by the day. Seoul will start off the morning at -10 degrees and reach over -1 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak to 2 and 3 degrees respectively. Now down onto Jeju Island, we can expect some sporadic snow. Daejeon at -1, while Dokdo hits -3, and Mangkeumgang tops out at -9. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a great evening.
Well, thank you for that, Michelle. And that's all from us for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Chen.
And I'm Moon Kanyang. Thank you as always for being here with us. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we will see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.